Kedves hölgyeim és uraim, jó napot kívánok! Én Mance Nevijo, Jaguar Land Rover Magyarország mérnökségi igazgatója vagyok. I'm very happy to be here with you in this webinar. It's a new experience for me, but I think it's part of the new normal to talk in front of a camera rather than talking to people. But it's also part of the new normal, which I will share with you now in my deck. We are two very strong brands. Jaguar on the left side of this chart, you can see 1922 established. So we are just about to face our 100-year anniversary. And on the right hand, Land Rover, a very strong brand, which is a bring me everywhere DNA car brand. And yeah, we are very proud of, let's say, being merged together 10 years ago. And I would like to continue with my deck now, sharing to you about the ACES revolution. You see on this next chart, it says disrupt or be disrupted. And I will share with you why it is important to be on top of the game rather than following and having maybe strong consequences to suffer, which you don't want as a company. Starting with next deck, why do we need to change today? I mentioned it briefly, it's about digitalization. You can see on the next chart here, different industries like publishing, photo, music, software, telco, travel. We all know the world when we read newspapers, when we had films for the camera, when we had software or music on CDs or on DVDs, wired telephones, we still don't remember. And when we booked a travel, we went to the local store, to travel store and asked for advice and we booked a travel there. Next step was that all those contents became digital by iPads, by digital cameras, listening to MP3, smartphones or internet, bookings for travels. And now the next step is everything what went digital is now part of the cloud, is part of the apps, is part of the smartphones, which means with the smartphone on your palm, you can control your life, you can control the world. It's a huge power and a huge knowledge. You can see in the next chart that in addition, some examples, Uber, as the world's largest taxi company, is not owning vehicles. You can see Facebook, it's the world's most popular media owner. They create no content. Alibaba, as the world's most valuable retailer, has no inventory. And Airbnb, as the world's largest accommodation provider, owns no real estate. So this is something which we are facing as an automotive industry too. And the question is, what will happen to us and how do we ensure that we are staying on top of the game? And the answer I've been giving you now on the next chart, and I will explain you what ACES stands for. So the A stands for autonomous, the C stands for the connected, the E stands for the electrified, and the S stays for the shared business. Now going into the first of the ACES letters, which is the autonomous drive. You can see here now on the next chart, 94% of major accidents are caused by human error. So if it's tiredness, if it's not a good health situation, if it's distraction by something, if it's alcohol, whatsoever. So our aim with autonomous is to make the mobility, the individual mobility, safer. On the next chart, that's very important, I will share with you how exactly autonomous cars work. And you will see it based on a step-by-step animation. It starts all with what we call the onboard intelligence. You can see here on the left side of this paper, you can see a car from the perspective, from the bird's view, from the top, and you can see all these radars are covering 180% to the front and 180% to the rear of the car. So it's a 360-degree coverage of everything which is covering the onboard intelligence. On the next click, you can see now is what we call the offboard intelligence. So a car needs to be equipped with smart software, with smart sensors, but we also need, for example, high definition maps. We also need cloud-based content, like information about travel disruption, about heavy rains, about accidents, about major halts. So this is something which we have, which we need to do. And this is something where we need what we call the offboard intelligence. On the next click, now the challenge of the car is having the onboard intelligence, having the offboard intelligence, is to localize itself. So the car needs to know exactly where my location is. And we are talking about localization, we're talking about precision in the range of centimeters and not like in meters in the past. If you imagine an autonomous car driving and being out of position for 2 or 3 meters, this already can cause fatal accidents on a highway, or if you're approaching a curve, if you're, let's say, 2 or 3 meters before or after, this is having a massive impact on the travel safety. So the first task of a self-driving car is to localize itself. Next click now shows the next challenge, which are the dynamic objects. So we use the sensors of the car, the cameras, the laser scanners, the radars, ultrasonic sensors. All of them are used to understand how is my surrounding. So I know where I am in localization. Next step is I need to understand what is happening around me. And more important than just a static picture is to predict how are these dynamic objects moving. So for that, it makes very much sense to understand. Is it a car, what the camera is detecting? Is it a bicycle? Is it a pedestrian? So after localizing, after understanding my surrounding, the next click shows the path planning. So the car with its computing power then calculates thousands of times in a second which are the potential paths which are ideal to drive in this given situation. And with this path goes in line the next click, the trajectory, which is then selected as the trajectory to be driven. Finally, with the next click, you can see the motion control. So all the actuators in the car are controlling the steering, braking, acceleration. Everything is done by the car itself. So once we know which trajectory to drive, the motion control then moves the car. And again, this happens a few thousand times per second. So this is a process which is never stopping in terms of managing a car which is driving on itself. This was the part about the ACES, about autonomous. I'm now going to the next one, which is about cleaner and more safer drive. So you can see 9 out of 10 people worldwide do not breathe safe air, and it's not only increasing economies. I mean, everyone has China and India in mind. No, it's also in Europe. It happens in Europe that a lot of cities in Europe are, let's say, not meeting the criteria of clean air. So having this in mind, what we need to do is we need to make sure that local zero pollution cars are available. Our answer to that is our new I-Pace. So we are very proud of this car. It's the first ever time that the car won 3 prestigious awards. It's the Car of the Year, it's the Green Car of the Year, and it's the Car Design of the Year. So most of you had the chance to see the car already somewhere on road. It's also driving already on the roads in Budapest. So basically how an electric car looks like is explained on this picture, which is the electrified propulsion architecture. You can see in principle it's electric motors. In our case, we have 2 electric motors on the front and on the rear axle. It goes in line with a battery. The battery usually is part of a platform which gives the car, let's say, a very good drivability because the center of gravity is very low. Then we're talking about the battery management system. The battery management system needs to ensure that the car is always driving and the battery staying in perfect climate and performance conditions. It cannot be too cold, it cannot be too hot. And we have the charging unit in the rear, which is a DC-DC charger in this case. You can also see that electric cars in the future, they don't have the challenges of having a gearbox, having a fuel tank, having exhaust treatment of the fuel which is burned in the combustion engine. So this makes the architecture significantly simpler compared to a current internal combustion engine car, which also allows new players becoming part of the game and new countries. Most of you know that China is very strong in developing something very strong in this area. If you now look further, you can see alternative propulsion will change also will shift a little bit the global availability of raw materials. You can see on this chart the world map, which is showing black, all the countries which have been very strong in oil and gas, and this was the driver of mobility in the past. Now you can see the blue countries, which are countries which are providing materials for battery manufacturing and electric motor manufacturing. Unfortunately, you can also see that Europe is not playing a role in the future and didn't play a role in the past. So we as Europe, we are not very strong on raw materials, which means innovation is our key to maintain our leading position in individual mobility. That makes it very, very important. Continuing further in the ACER story is the connectivity part, which makes cars smarter. You can see here, Londoners spend 100 hours a year stationary in traffic. Yeah, the picture tells everything. That's not what we want. Big cities occupy only 0.5% of the world's surface, but they consume 75% of the resources. And this is one of the big challenges why connectivity is becoming the solution to overcome these problems. The next click shows again our cars, and you can see on the right side, we are very strong in, let's say, making the shape of a car very beautiful. We know how to weld, we know how to bend, we know how to paint and assemble a car. But with the next click, you will see that the digital content is becoming the new horsepower. Everyone knows in this current crisis which we're having with the virus, what happened with Netflix, and our customers are expecting that all this content which they used to enjoy from home, they can also continue to use when they're in the car. So connectivity is becoming one of the big challenges. One of the keys, it's the next click here, is the speed of transmission. So autonomous cars will need to upload data from the car to the back end, but also they need to receive content like entertainment, videos, media. They need to receive this content from the back end to the car. And you can see here that, let's say, more or less it's a given standard. 4 terabyte per day, every day, is an autonomous vehicle transmitting between the back end and the car. And if you, let's say, compare this 4 terabyte, which is roughly, let's say, a 2-hour-long movie like Guardians of the Galaxy, in 3G, it took 26 hours to up and download this kind of volume. Of course, that's not feasible. With 4G, having a perfect 4G connection, it's still 6 minutes. And with 5G, which is the new standard, which is just now about to be established, we're talking about seconds. That makes also, let's say, a whole infrastructure development very, very important. Finally, the last letter of ACES is the S, stands for shared. You can see here, we as Jaguar Land Rover, we have a collaboration with a taxi company in Munich, so that's our contribution to that. Roughly the next chart shows you what can be shared. In principle, everything can be shared. Tools, accommodation, cars, even experiences can be shared, and finance opportunity is also part of the shared economy. The breakthrough happened, you can see it here on the right upper cover with Airbnb, but also, let's say, with Uber. So this was the big breakthrough of the shared economy. And on the next chart, you can see here on the left side. So in the past, we had a lot of very strong push forces which demanded shared mobility, like the urbanization, pollution, congestion, just to name a few. So the need for shared economy in the mobility service was very big in the past, but we didn't have the enablers. Now we have the enablers. You can see it: digitalization, smartphones, wireless connectivity, interaction between people in a seamless speed. So now we have not only the need, we also have the abilities. And now with the next click, you see on the right side here, there is a big demand. There's a very, very big demand for shared services in mobility. So you can see the portfolio, which is showing you flexibility and distance. So if you look on the very, very long distance, which is the right side of this portfolio, and you need a very high flexibility, then you end up in the upper right corner of this portfolio. And you will see this is a field where you will always need to have a car, even as an ownership, or as a car rental. So there will be a demand for cars even in the future. But if you're talking about very short distance and you have a low or high flexibility, you can still walk, you can take a bicycle. The black area, which you can see here, this is showing, let's say, a medium level of distance, a medium level of flexibility in your travel. So this is something which proves that shared services are very important either. This brings me to the end of my presentation. So I would like to, let's say, summarize one more time. ACE stands for A, autonomous, C for connected, E for electrified, S for shared. I shared with you how we as Jaguar Land Rover see the challenges of the future, and also how we set our path to make sure we are on top of the game and we are top of the competition and we are defining the new mobility. Thanks for listening, and I hope you will have up for upcoming sessions which will also inspire you for your future work. Thank you very much.